SLT Mobitel Home Broadband සමගින් non-stop ගමනකට data බෝවන්. SLT Mobitel Home Broadband සමගින් non-stop ගමනකට data බෝවන්.
දසනකාන්තී චූර්ණය සහිත ලීවර් ආයුෂ් දන්තාලේපය දත්වල ඇති ප්‍රශ්න 10ක් වළකයි.
Tonight benefits from afar. As the Federal Reserve hikes its rates by 75 basis points, experts expect commodity prices in the country to dip. Patience. President Ranil Wickremesinghe informs Parliament that IMF agreement will be brought after finalizing details with the creditors as well. Dark days ahead. PUCSL chairman warns that the country might have to experience long hours of power cuts again unless a new coal tender is agreed upon. Positive developments. Colombo Stock Exchange records a net foreign inflow for the first time since 2017. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9. This Thursday, the 22nd of September 2022.
Vim Deara milliliter CA Smart Pack එක රුපියල් 85ට දැන් වෙළඳ පොලේ.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana 24's English News. I'm Andrew Bernard. Now in a top story for tonight, the US Central Bank has pushed interest rates to the highest level in almost 15 years as it fights to rein in soaring prices in the world's largest economy. The rate hike will have far-reaching consequences around the world, with Sri Lanka likely to benefit from lower commodity prices. However, experts are split on how the Central Bank of Sri Lanka will conduct its monetary policy in the near future. The US Federal Reserve announced it was raising its key rate by another 0.75 percentage points, lifting the target range of 3% to 3.25% yesterday, subsequent to its open market committee meeting. The bank said that the borrowing costs are expected to climb more and remain high. The move comes despite mounting concerns that the cost of controlling inflation could be harsh economic downturn. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said the rate rises were necessary to slow demand, easing the pressures, putting up prices, and avoiding long-term damage to the economy. But he conceded that they will take a toll. This is the fifth increase by the US Central Bank in 6 months and its third consecutive 75 basis point hike, which will put upward pressure on other interest rates throughout the economy. For consumers, the Fed's move will spur yet again the question of where to park their savings for the best return and how to maximize their borrowing costs. Banks in nearly every country, with the big exceptions of Japan and China, are facing similar trade-offs as they raise rates to combat their own inflation problems. Meanwhile, in Sri Lanka, the Fed rate is likely to contribute positively with commodity prices declining, according to experts. Speaking to AdaDerana English News, Dimantha Matthew, head of research at First Capital Holdings PLC, expressed his views.
Central Bank of America doesn't seem to be still happy with the inflation control, that it makes indications that they will continue their rate hikes. We are sort of seeing a recessionary environment globally, but we expect this trend to continue into the future as well. So we've already seen global commodity prices declining, and this is favorable to developing countries like Sri Lanka. We are a net importer in terms of goods. A significant portion of our imports are going into fuel imports. So this trend of the global recessionary environment and the dip in global commodity prices is trending positively for countries such as Sri Lanka, where our import costs are significantly reducing, and due to the current crisis, that Sri Lanka is facing at the moment. It is a significant benefit that is there for the country. If you also take the monetary policy of Sri Lanka, so we don't think that Sri Lanka's monetary policy is likely to trend with significantly increased rates throughout this year. Already in March, April, we saw a very high rate hike coming about 700 basis points, and then again very recently we saw another rate hike coming in place. We feel that the central bank is more likely to maintain monetary policy at the current levels throughout the year, and we feel that there could be somewhat tendency towards a cut maybe towards the second quarter of next year. With that, we feel that the current situation is more or less all the economic indicators are stabilizing, and we don't think there is a requirement for any type of change in monetary policy throughout the current year.
However, Murtaza Jaffarji, the CEO of JB Securities, had a slightly different opinion.
This has been a busy week for central banks. Many of them have increased interest rates, the Federal Reserve being the most important. The implications to Sri Lanka is that we are going to benefit from weaker commodity prices. Expectations are economic growth in the West are going to slow down. Second is that some of the soft commodities like food, etc. has also started softening. Headwind that we are going to face is that with higher interest rates on US dollars and the Federal Reserve also stating that they're going to continue with quantitative tightening, financial conditions are going to get tighter and our access to foreign exchange is going to be a little bit harder. Most of the foreign capital globally is going to head towards the United States due to higher interest rates. The implications for Sri Lanka is that we are not in a position to loosen our monetary policy, and I expect our central bank will have to tighten further. Our market interest rates are double what policy interest rates are, and that doesn't necessarily mean that market interest rates need to increase. There may also be another ramification to Sri Lanka, that demand in the West will slow down. The demand for our apparel exports are already slowing down, and other exports also will slow down, and perhaps even in terms of tourism, that because there is high energy prices in the West, the disposable income will come down. Perhaps demand will also come down, but Sri Lanka is a cheap destination and therefore remains to be very attractive.
Now, the Colombo Stock Exchange recorded a net foreign inflow year-to-date for the first time since 2017 yesterday. This was largely driven by Japan's SG Holdings buying into blue-chip Expo Lanka Holdings PLC. For the first time in 4 years, the Colombo stock market, with 294 listed companies and over 900,000 CDS accounts, recorded a net foreign inflow amounting to 20 billion rupees year-to-date for both primary and secondary trading. In the previous years, the stock market recorded net foreign outflows, with 2021 recording a net outflow of 53 billion rupees, followed by 2020's net outflow of 51 billion rupees. In the preceding years, the figures stood at 11.7 billion rupees and 23 billion rupees respectively. In January and February of the first quarter this year, the CSE recorded a combined net outflow of more than 3.1 billion rupees for more than 2 months. However, in March, the exchange recorded a 1.4 billion net inflow. In the second quarter, the total net outflow stood at over 64 million rupees. Things look more optimistic for the third quarter, with July and August recording inflows of more than 784 million rupees and 933 million rupees respectively. The highest foreign purchase for this quarter from July to September was recorded from Tuesday the 20th of September, amounting to more than 2.4 billion rupees. After falling for 3 consecutive sessions yesterday, the all-share price index stood at 9,913 points, while the S&P SL index stood at 3,199 points. Shares gained marginally in the last hours of yesterday's session, largely thanks to India saying that it had begun discussions with Sri Lankan authorities on restructuring debt and promising to assist Sri Lanka by making long-term investments. Following these announcements, the all-share price index and the S&P SL 20 went up by 12.1 points and 31.3 points respectively, while turnover stood at 4.6 billion rupees. A total market turnover for the year stands at over 540 billion rupees, with more than 4.7 million trades so far this year. The CSE All Share Price Index has recorded a 19.13% improvement so far this month, while regional exchanges dipped. China's SCZSC index and India's Nifty 50 index reported a negative 5.65% and 1.17% for the same period. However, Sri Lanka's main stock index recorded the largest contraction in the region year-to-date of 24.3%. China's index showed a contraction of 21.17% and India's Nifty 50 index a gain of 1.9%. Now the SPI closed in green as a result of price gains in counters such as LOLC Holdings, Sampath Bank and Valuable One, with the turnover crossing over 4.1 billion rupees. A similar behavior was witnessed in the S&P SL20. High net worth and institutional investor participation was noted in Expo Lanka Holdings, Sunshine Holdings, Lankem Developments. Mixed interest was observed in Lanka IOC, ACL Cables and Royal Ceramics, whilst retail interest was noted in Browns Investments, Asia Sialaka, Commodities and SMB Leasing, voting and non-voting. Foreign participation in the market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreigners closing as net buyers. The chairman of the Colombo Stock Exchange, Dilshan Veerasekara, said today that they expect to introduce a host of new financial instruments to the Colombo Bourse by mid-2023. He made these remarks while speaking to Indivari Amavatha on our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24 today. Joining the discussion also Chairman of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Viraj Dayaratna, added that the SEC has taken measures to grant approval from many other programs for the benefit of the general public.
What new financial instruments are you also thinking of?
That's been a big hindrance. We've been a dual product market for far too long. So we have plain vanilla equity and we have some listed debt, and those are really essentially the only instruments that are traded. We've looked at introducing new products, so we've got the legislation for REITs in place. Unfortunately, the current interest rate environment isn't as conducive to launch REITs out, so we've not had any arranger come or a manager come and launch a REIT yet, but technically it is possible to get REITs out. We are looking at short selling as a quick new product because we feel otherwise the market is always one-sided. This allows a hedge for investors. It also allows foreigners to maybe take bets on the other side of the fence in terms of equity positions. We are looking at mortgage-backed securities, which we feel you have a securitized or collateralized sort of debt instruments that listed, which will also make the banking sector more efficient in terms of being able to churn capital around faster. And we are also looking at maybe certain other commodity-based products getting listed. A gold-backed product is a fairly easy win, easily structured product that we can introduce. So we've conceptualized a lot of these new products. We are currently in discussion with the regulator in terms of amending the rules that are required to bring these products out, as well as thereafter creating awareness amongst investors and the public so that they actually come and trade these products.
What is the timeline?
We are looking at fairly short timeline. I think by about mid of 2023, we hope to have most of these instruments that I just spoke of coming onto the market in some form.
The gold-backed product is something that the SEC has granted in principle approval, and CSE is preparing the legal regime. As far as gold-backed products is concerned, then we have also facilitated repurchase agreements on corporate debt securities. There again, we have approved the initial legal framework. Then with regard to bonds, both green bonds as well as the introduction of blue bonds in principle approval has been granted by the SEC. Then one other interesting development will be approval we granted for the introduction of Islamic capital market products. So there are a lot of new products which will come in. We have given the in principle approval, and the CSE actually is working on the legal framework. So some of them we have, I think they are nearing, and once the legal framework is in place, we are ready to introduce them.
Now, an ambassadors forum on debt restructuring and the International Monetary Fund program was carried out today under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The President's Media Division stated that a total of 16 Colombo-based missions participated in the forum. The PMD added that 6 other participants are taking part in the forum from New Delhi virtually. President Wickremesinghe requested the ambassadors and high commissioners to participate in an ad hoc bilateral creditor coordination platform which will assist the country in its debt restructuring efforts. Several missions, including Japan and France, extended their country's support towards Sri Lanka and its debt restructuring efforts. Now, Speaker of Parliament Mahinda Yapa informed the Parliament today on behalf of President Ranil Wickremesinghe that the IMF agreement will be tabled in Parliament after the discussions with the creditors have been finalised and included in the final report.
His Excellency the President informed me that even the Cabinet has not been briefed about these discussions. Though they say that it has been agreed with officials, but it has to be approved by the board of the IMF. So before that, he has to have some discussions with the other creditor countries, and then their report also has to be added into that. Until such time, it will not be decided by anybody. So before that, there will be a cabinet briefing. Even the cabinet has not been informed yet. The cabinet will be briefed very soon once he received all the details. And for that briefing, opposition also will be invited, and even the speaker will be invited, and any other interested parties also can be participated. That is what he told me in the morning.
My point is, once the cabinet approves...
Yes, cabinet has not been approved yet. That is what he said.
Then it will be too late for...
Before that, it has to be briefed to the cabinet. That's what he told me.
If the cabinet approves, it will be too late for Parliament to discuss. That is what I am saying.
Yes, it has not been approved by the cabinet. That is
then
what...
you must give assurance before cabinet approval, it should be submitted to Parliament.
That is what he gave you.
All right, if you say so, it's okay.
Stay with us for more news on the other side of this break.
අයිනෝ පුතා හැබැයි යා ගෙදර නිදියන්නෙම අමුතු තැනක.
කාලගුණය කොහොමුණත් රයිනෝ නං වහලට සේෆ් තමයි මුළු ගෙදරම. Rhino Cement Roofing Sheets. Then you know Rhino. I know.
Big 3.
Uber Eats මගින් ඉදිරිපත් කරන ආදරයෙන් අවශ්‍යතා ඇති අයට අත්‍යවශ්‍ය භාණ්ඩ පරිත්‍යාග කිරීමට වේදිකාවක්.
Welcome back. Now, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka approved the request of the CB for power cuts of 2 hours and 20 minutes from tomorrow until the 25th of September. The decision was taken after considering the unavailability of old Lakshapana power plant, lack of fuel, availability of the West Coast due to sudden increase in demand, according to the PUCSL. The power cut schedule is as follows. Groups A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V and W will experience 1 hour power cuts during the daytime and 1 hour and 20 minutes at night. Now, with the possibility of 10 to 12 hour long power cuts looming once again due to the available coal supplies expected to deplete completely by the end of next month, Public Utilities Commission Chairman Janaka Ratnayaka believes that the best course of action would be to go for a fresh tender in the coming weeks. The PUCSL chief warns that unless the country finds another supplier for coal, long hours of power cuts are imminent, as the country needs to have coal shipments coming in every 5 days to operate the coal-powered plants in the country. Earlier this year, Sri Lankans had to deal with an unpleasant experience of spending close to 12 hours of power interruptions a day due to the shortage in foreign reserves. However, the power interruptions were brought down to 1 hour at present, as the country has managed to improve the forex reserves position. Once again, however, the possibility of Sri Lanka having to undergo power cuts spanning 10 to 12 hours a day is warned of. The fear of long hours of power cuts has once again surfaced due to a legal issue surrounding the country's coal provider, a company known as Black Sands, due to allegations of the company not being shortlisted by the tender committee. With this being the case, the Public Utilities Commission of Sri Lanka said that the country will need to go for a new tender in the next 2 to 3 weeks or risk having to spend 10 hours a day without electricity.
Since we are using almost 5 metric tons a day in order to run 2 plants, we have only 250,000 metric tons, which will be finished by almost 28th of October. We are facing some crisis with the tender which was awarded to Black Sand Corporation in order to supply coal for the next season, which was the cheapest, and Lanka Coal Company has selected the supplier to supply coal, but unfortunately, since certain parties have gone into litigation, plus the other unsolicited bidders are objecting to this, it has come to a point where the Black Sand, the selected company, is not in a position to supply the coal for the next season. And therefore, only available option is to go for the previous year, the orders, which are slightly expensive than the quoted prices this year. The issue is that this year, the tenderer quoted with 6 months credit period or with the use and sell facility. Since our banks are not in a position to open LCs with the international corresponding banks, and since we do not have Forex and the US dollars which is required, now we have come to a very critical situation where we need to pay 30% of the purchase price in advance, and again when the unloading take place, we have to pay the balance. In order to avoid power cuts after 28th of October, we need to make sure that we order a shipment every 5 days. We need to order a shipment spending almost $21 million per consignment, and we need minimum of US dollars 90 million per month in order to get this coal imported. Otherwise, what will happen is that when we deplete our stocks within next 2 to 3 weeks, probably the last week of October, we will run short of coal, and we need to shut down almost 900 megawatts of power, and we are looking at almost 10 to 12 hours power cut as we experienced around few months back. So we need to avoid this. PCSL is very much concerned about the situation. We had a very constructive meeting 2 days back with the officials from Central Bank, Treasury and the Ministry and CB. There we stressed the point that we need to make sure that all these government institutions should get together and find money, required money of almost maybe around 90 to 100 million a month, and maybe for Lanka Coal Company to go for a new tender, since the related parties are disrupted that the due tender process, and selected parties not interested in supplying anymore, thinking that they will get into trouble if they started supplying. So we need to make sure that available and the ordered shipments from the previous is imported and go for a new fresh tender within next couple of weeks, and make sure that you get right supplier with the right credit facilities for us to have continuous coal supply in order to maintain 24 hours power supply.
The Sri Lanka High Commissioner in India, Milinda Moragoda, and Indian National Security Advisor Shri Ajit Kumar Doval reviewed the status of the bilateral relations between the two countries today. This took place today as part of the regular and ongoing dialogue between the two countries. The discussion focused on a comprehensive review of the status of relationships between India and Sri Lanka, along with priority areas for future cooperation were also discussed. Deputy National Security Advisor of India and Ambassador Vikram Mishri and the Deputy High Commissioner of Sri Lanka in New Delhi, Niluka Kandanaruwanma, also participated in the meeting. Now, one of the world's leading non-profit organizations, Americares, focused on health and development, has donated urgently needed medical supplies for Sri Lanka worth more than $773,000 US. The donation was made following a request made by the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Washington, D.C. and under the purview of Ambassador Mahinda Samarasinghe. The donation includes prenatal and lactation vitamins, chronic disease medications, intravascular catheters, syringes and gloves that are urgently required from the Sri Lankan Ministry of Health. In its statement, the Sri Lankan Embassy in Washington, D.C. added that an MOU was also signed between the Ministry of Health in Sri Lanka and Americares, enabling future donations to take place. A formal certificate handover ceremony took place at the Embassy of Sri Lanka in Washington, D.C. to mark the momentum's occasion with His Excellency Ambassador Mahinda Samarasinghe and Sadadana Rajamodi, Americares Deputy Medical Officer for Americares. And that's all the news we have for you this evening. Join us again tomorrow at the same time. Good night.